All right, today we're going to tackle a pretty big idea in statistics, sample size. But we're going to do it with a story that's, well, delicious. Welcome to the biryani method. So let's really put ourselves in this situation, right? Imagine you've cooked this massive pot of biryani for, I don't know, hundreds of people. The aroma is amazing. But how do you know for sure that it's actually perfect? You can't have everyone taste it first. So what's the magic number? How many tasters do you need to be confident you've totally nailed it? And that's what this is all about. That number, statisticians call it sample size, and getting it right is the super delicate balance. Go with too few tasters, and you might accidentally serve a bad batch to everyone. But ask too many, and you're just wasting perfectly good food and time. Okay, so how in the world does our chef, or, a brilliant researcher, land on that perfect number? Well, it actually boils down to 5 fundamental rules. Let's break them down, one by one. Okay, rule number 1, you got to think about how big the problem is. I mean, is it something super obvious that anyone would spot in a second, like totally raw chicken? Or is it a tiny little flaw that's kind of easy to miss, like it being just a little undercooked? In our kitchen, let's call this the spoil severity. Raw chicken is a major problem. But in the world of stats, they have a name for this: effect size. So here's the bottom line, and this is so important. If you're hunting for a really tiny, subtle difference, that slightly undercooked chicken, you're just going to need way more tasters to be sure you found it. A big, glaring problem? That takes way fewer people to notice. All right, rule number 2. Let's talk about how well you mixed that biryani. Is it consistent all the way through, or did you end up with these pockets of crazy spice right next to a totally bland spoonful of rice? So you can picture this as the spice spread, right? The more uneven it is, the more that flavor is spread out. And you guessed it, statistics has a term for this too. It's called variance. And this is such a perfect way to understand a fundamental rule of statistics. The more varied your population is, in this case, the more different each plate of biryani tastes, well, the bigger your sample has to be to get a real accurate sense of the whole thing. Okay, moving on to rule number 3. Now you have to think about the stakes. Who are you serving this to? Is it just your friends who probably forgive you for anything? Or is there a super strict world-famous food critic sitting out there? Yeah, that strict judge. They represent what's called the significance level. In research, you'll often hear it called alpha. It's basically the bar for how much proof you need before you're convinced. And the rule here is super straightforward. The tougher the judge, the more proof you need. So to convince that demanding critic, you're going to need a whole chorus of tasters all saying the exact same thing. All right, rule number 4. This one is all about your tasters. I mean, how good are they really? Are they super picky foodies who can taste every single grain of spice? Or are they, people who probably wouldn't even notice if there was no salt at all? This ability, the ability of your guests to actually find a problem, if a problem is really there, that's what scientists call statistical power. It's like, how powerful is your test at finding the truth? So if you want to be really, really sure, like 90% confident, that you're not going to miss a real flaw in that biryani, you need more power. And how do you get more power? Simple. You invite more tasters. Okay, last, but definitely not least, rule number 5. How you pick your tasters matters a lot. Are you picking people at random from all over the room? Or are you just grabbing the first 3 tables you see and asking for their opinions? See, if you just sample by the table, you get what's called the table effect. People at the same table might influence each other's opinions, right? Or maybe they all got served from the same slightly burnt corner of the pot. In stats, this is a type of cluster sampling. So the takeaway here is, if your plan involves sampling people in these little groups or clusters, you have to account for that. You're going to need to sample from more tables, which means your total number of tasters has to be bigger to get a fair result. Okay, so we've got our 5 rules. But what's really cool is how a smart chef or, a seasoned researcher handles the real world, because it's always messy. They've got a few pro tips. First off, they always plan for dropouts, so they invite a few extra people just in case. They also often run a pilot study. Think of it as a tiny little taste test beforehand to get a feel for things like that spice spread or variance. And one more thing, if their sample is already a huge chunk of the whole group, they can use a special formula to actually reduce the number of tasters they need. Pretty cool, right? Oof, okay. That was a lot to take in, I know. 5 different rules, all messing with that one magic number. So how on earth are you supposed to remember all this? Well, don't worry, our chef has left us a little recipe for that too. Here's the trick. Just remember this one phrase. Confident cooks with precise, spicy plates have powers over the guests. It's a perfect little memory hook, right? Confident cooks is your significance level. Spicy plates is your effect size. You get the idea. It keeps it all perfectly organized.
And really, it all just boils down to this. The person who came up with this whole analogy put it perfectly. It's not just about getting people to taste. It's about getting the right number of people. Just enough to find the truth, but not so many that you're wasting the whole feast.
And that brings us to one last thought for you to chew on. Because this whole idea, it's not just for chefs or scientists. So think about it. What's the big pot in your world? What business idea, what project, what big life question could use the right number of tasters before you go all in?